The Galactic Defense Academy had stood on the planet Verath Prime for 3,000 years. It was the oldest military school in the known universe. Every species that wanted to join the Confederated Systems had to send their best young warriors here. They came from hundreds of different worlds. They trained together. They learned together. And at the end of their training, they all faced the same final test. The Vornkai. Danny Holloway had heard stories about the creature since his first day at the academy. The other cadets spoke about it in whispers. They said it was a monster created by beings who had lived long before any of the current species existed. They said it could look into your soul. They said it knew things about you that even you did not know. Danny did not know if any of that was true, but he knew one thing for certain. In 3 days, he would have to face it. He was sitting alone in the meal hall when his friend Vorak found him. Vorak was a Kethari, which meant he had green scales covering his entire body and 4 arms instead of 2. His face looked like something between a lizard and an insect, with large black eyes and clicking mandibles where a mouth should be. "You are thinking about the test," Vorak said. It was not a question. Danny nodded. Hard not to. Vorak sat down across from him. His mandibles clicked softly, which Danny had learned was a sign of nervousness. "I have been thinking about it too. My father faced the Vornkai 30 years ago. He still has nightmares. Did he pass? Yes. But he does not speak of what happened in that room." Vorak leaned closer. "Danny, I must be honest with you. Many of the instructors do not think you will survive." Danny looked at his friend. He was not surprised. He had felt the doubt from the moment he arrived at the academy. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only made contact with alien life 12 years ago, and they had only joined the Confederacy 8 years after that. Danny was one of the first humans ever allowed to train at the academy, and compared to the other species, humans were not impressive. The Draxians stood 8 feet tall and could lift massive weights without effort. The Velun could see in complete darkness and move without making any sound. The Kethari had armored bodies and could survive wounds that would kill most other beings. Even the smaller species had special abilities. The Morth could breathe underwater. The Solani could heal from injuries in minutes. Humans had none of these gifts. They were small. They were soft. They broke easily. "I know what they think," Danny said quietly. "I have known since I got here. And yet you stayed." "I had to." Danny pushed his food around his plate. "Humanity needs officers in the Confederate fleet. We need a voice. We need respect. And the only way to get that is to prove we belong here." Vorak studied him with those large, dark eyes. "You carry a heavy weight, my friend." Danny smiled, but there was no happiness in it. Someone has to. The next 2 days passed quickly. Danny trained harder than ever. He ran the obstacle courses until his legs burned. He practiced combat techniques until his hands bled. He studied the history of the Vornkai, reading every document he could find about the ancient creature. The records were incomplete. The beast had been created by beings called the Architects, a species that had vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago. No one knew exactly why they had made the Vornkai, or what purpose it was meant to serve. All anyone knew was that it had been testing warriors for 3,000 years, and it had never been wrong. Those it accepted became great leaders. Those it rejected faded into nothing, and those it killed were forgotten entirely. On the morning of the test, Danny woke before sunrise. He dressed in the simple gray uniform all cadets wore and walked to the window of his small room. Outside, the twin suns of Verath Prime were just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He thought about his family back on Earth. His mother, who had cried when he left. His father, who had served in the Earth military for 20 years and had told Danny that courage was not about being unafraid. It was about being afraid and doing what needed to be done anyway. Danny took a deep breath. "I am afraid," he said to the empty room. "But I will do what needs to be done." The proving hall was located at the center of the academy, a massive circular building made of black stone that seemed to absorb the light around it. Danny arrived to find the other cadets already gathered outside. There were 47 of them in total, representing 12 different species. Commander Silas stood at the entrance. She was a Velun. tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that had no visible pupils. She had been one of Danny's instructors for the past 2 years, and she had never shown him any kindness. "Today you face the final test," she announced, her voice cold and formal. "You will enter the proving hall, one at a time. You will face the Vornkai alone. There are 3 possible outcomes. You may pass, you may fail, or you may die." She paused to let those words sink in. "If you pass, you will be granted the rank of officer in the Confederate fleet. If you fail, you will be sent home in disgrace. If you die, your body will be returned to your family with full military honors." Danny felt his heart beating faster. Around him, the other cadets shifted nervously. "The order has been determined by tradition," Commander Silas continued. "Senior species enter first. The newest species enters last." Her pale eyes found Danny in the crowd. "The human will go last." Some of the other cadets glanced at Danny. A few of them smiled in a way that was not friendly. They expected him to fail. They expected him to die. They thought he was a joke, a small, soft creature who had no business being among real warriors. Danny met their eyes without looking away. He said nothing. He had learned that words meant little here. Only actions mattered. The massive doors of the proving hall slowly opened, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. "First cadet," Commander Silas called. "Enter." A Draxian named Korath stepped forward. He was enormous, with gray skin like stone and muscles that seemed carved from rock. He walked into the darkness without hesitation, and the doors closed behind him. The waiting began. Danny stood in silence, watching the doors, preparing himself for what was to come. He did not know if he would survive. He did not know if he was worthy. But he knew that he would not run. He would face the beast, whatever happened. That was all he could do. The first test lasted 12 minutes. Danny counted every second in his head while he waited outside the proving hall. The other cadets stood in tense silence, their eyes fixed on the massive black doors. No sound came from within. The walls of the ancient building were too thick for any noise to escape. When the doors finally opened, Korath walked out. The Draxian was bleeding from a deep wound on his shoulder, and his gray, stone-like skin was covered in scratches. But he was smiling. On his upper arm, there was a single mark, a line carved into his flesh by something sharp. "I passed," he said, his voice filled with pride. The other cadets let out sounds of relief and congratulation. Commander Silas simply nodded and made a note on her datapad. "Next cadet," she called. One by one, they entered the darkness. Danny watched each of them go. He watched them come back. Some returned with the mark of acceptance on their bodies, bleeding but triumphant. Others returned without any mark at all, their heads hanging low in shame. These were the ones who had failed, though Danny did not know exactly what they had done wrong, and some did not return at all. The third cadet to enter was a young Morth named Pello. He was small and blue-skinned, with gills on the sides of his neck and webbed fingers. Danny had trained with him a few times. Pello was fast in the water but clumsy on land, and he had always seemed nervous about the final test. Pello entered the proving hall. The doors closed. 15 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Finally, the doors opened again. But Pello did not walk out. Instead, 2 medical officers rushed in with a floating stretcher. When they emerged, Pello was lying on it, his body covered in deep wounds. His eyes were closed, and he was not moving. "Is he dead?" someone whispered. Commander Silas checked her datapad. "He is alive. Barely. He will be transported to the medical center immediately." The stretcher floated away, carrying Pello toward a waiting ship. Danny watched it go, feeling a cold weight settle in his stomach. That could be him in a few hours. That could be any of them. The testing continued. A Velen female named Sarathi entered the hall with confidence in her steps. She was one of the best fighters in their group, fast and silent and deadly with a blade. Danny had sparred with her once and lost badly within seconds. But when the doors opened again, Sarathi was not standing tall. She was on her knees, shaking so badly that she could barely move. 2 officers had to help her stand. There was no mark on her body. "Failed," Commander Silas announced without emotion. Cadet Sarathi showed excessive fear and attempted to flee. She is dismissed from the academy. Sarathi began to cry. It was a soft, broken sound that made Danny's chest hurt. She had trained for years. She had given everything. And now it was over. Just like that. As the hours passed, Danny began to understand something important. The Vornkai did not simply test strength or speed or fighting skill. If it did, Sarathi would have passed easily. She was one of the strongest among them, but she had failed because she had been afraid. Because she had tried to run. The beast was testing something else entirely. Vorak was called near the end of the afternoon. Danny's friend clicked his mandibles nervously as he approached the doors. "Good luck," Danny said quietly. Vorak turned to look at him. "If I do not return, tell my family I was brave. You will return. And you can tell them yourself." The Kethari managed something like a smile, then walked into the darkness. Danny waited. The minutes stretched out like hours. He tried not to think about all the things that could go wrong. He tried not to imagine his friend lying broken on a stretcher like Pello. 8 minutes later, the doors opened. Vorak walked out under his own power. There was blood running down his chest from a deep gash, and one of his forearms hung limp at his side. But on his other arm, there was the mark, a single line carved into his scales. "I passed," Vorak breathed, his voice shaking with relief. Danny let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. "I knew you would." Vorak stumbled toward him. "Danny, it is unlike anything I expected. The creature, it does not just attack you. It looks at you. It sees into you. I felt like it knew every secret I had ever kept, every fear I had ever hidden." "What did you do?" "I stood my ground. When it attacked, I fought back, but not with anger. I just defended myself. And eventually, it stopped." Vorak's large black eyes were wide. It made a sound, almost like it was satisfied. Then it marked me and walked away. Danny nodded slowly, storing this information away. "Stand your ground. Fight without anger. Let the beast see you." "Human," Commander Silas called. "You are next. You are the last." The other cadets who had already been tested turned to watch. Even those who had failed stopped to see what would happen. The human. The small, soft creature from the new species. The one everyone expected to die. Danny walked toward the doors. His legs felt weak, but he forced them to keep moving. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. But his face remained calm. He had practiced that look in the mirror for years. The doors began to open. "Danny," Vorak called out. Danny stopped and looked back. "The beast is old," Vorak said. "Older than any of us can understand. I think it has seen everything. But maybe it has not seen a human before. Maybe that is something." Danny did not know what to say to that. He simply nodded, then turned and walked through the doors. The darkness swallowed him. Behind him, the doors closed with a sound like thunder, and Danny found himself alone in the ancient chamber. The air was cold and smelled of stone and something else. Something animal and wild. For a moment, he could see nothing. Then, slowly, his eyes began to adjust. Pale blue lights floated near the ceiling, casting strange shadows across the walls. The chamber was circular, maybe 100 feet across, with walls made of the same black stone as the outside of the building. The floor was smooth and worn from thousands of years of use, and at the center of the chamber, something moved. Danny's breath caught in his chest. The Vornkai was larger than he had imagined. It stood at least 12 feet tall at the shoulder, with a body that seemed to be made of living shadow. Its skin was black and smooth, like polished obsidian, and it absorbed the light around it so completely that it was hard to tell where the creature ended and the darkness began. It had 6 eyes. They glowed red in the dim light, arranged in 2 rows of 3 on a massive head that looked like something between a wolf and a dragon. When it opened its mouth, Danny could see teeth as long as his forearm. The creature turned to face him, and those 6 red eyes locked onto his. Danny felt something then. A pressure in his mind. Like invisible fingers pushing into his thoughts. The beast was looking at him. Not just with its eyes, but with something else. Something deeper. It was seeing him. All of him. Every memory. Every fear. Every secret. Danny did not look away. He stood perfectly still and let the beast see whatever it wanted to see. He had nothing to hide. He was exactly what he appeared to be. A small, scared human who had come too far to turn back now. The Vornkai growled, low and deep, and the sound vibrated through Danny's entire body. Then it began to move toward him. The beast circled him slowly. Danny stood in the center of the chamber with his hands at his sides. He did not take a fighting stance. He did not reach for a weapon. He simply stood there and watched the massive creature move around him like a predator studying its prey. Each step the Vornkai took shook the ground beneath Danny's feet. Its claws scraped against the ancient stone floor, making a sound like knives being sharpened. Its 6 red eyes never left him. Not even for a moment. The pressure in Danny's mind grew stronger. It felt like the creature was digging through his thoughts, pulling out memories he had not visited in years. He saw flashes of his childhood, running through the fields behind his family's house. He saw his father teaching him to fight, to stand tall, to never give up. He saw his mother holding him when he was sick, singing songs to help him sleep. He saw darker things too. He saw the war footage that had played on every screen when he was 12 years old. The images of burning cities and dead bodies that had convinced humanity they were not alone in the universe. He saw the fear in people's eyes when the first alien ships appeared in Earth's sky. He saw the riots and the panic and the long months of uncertainty before the Confederacy finally made contact and offered peace. He saw what humans were capable of. The wars they had fought against each other long before they knew aliens existed. The weapons they had built. The terrible things they had done in the name of survival, or power, or simple hatred. The Vornkai growled again, louder this time. The sound filled the chamber and pressed against Danny's chest like a physical weight. It had seen, it knew, but Danny did not look away. "Yes," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "That is what we are. That is what I am." The beast stopped circling. It stood directly in front of him now, close enough that Danny could feel the heat radiating from its massive body. Its breath washed over him, hot and smelling of something ancient, like stone and fire and blood. 6 red eyes stared into his 2 brown ones. Danny stared back. In the observation gallery high above the chamber floor, Commander Silas and a dozen other officials watched through specially designed viewing screens. The gallery was protected by layers of shielding that even the Vornkai could not break through. But the officials still kept their distance from the windows. "What is he doing?" one of the senators asked. He was a Morth, old and gray, with cloudy eyes that had seen many things. "He is not fighting. He is not defending himself. He is failing," another official said with certainty. "The beast will kill him within minutes." But Admiral Kren, the ancient Draxian who had overseen the Vornkai trials for over 40 years, said nothing. His stone-gray face was unreadable as he watched the human boy standing before the beast. He had seen thousands of cadets face this test. He had seen them fight. He had seen them run. He had seen them beg for mercy. He had seen the strongest warriors in the galaxy brought to their knees by fear. But he had never seen anyone simply stand there and accept the beast's examination without resistance. Down in the chamber, the Vornkai lunged. It happened so fast that Danny barely had time to react. One moment the creature was standing still. The next, its massive jaws were flying toward his head, teeth gleaming in the pale blue light. Danny flinched. He could not help it. His body moved on instinct, pulling back just slightly as death rushed toward him. But he did not run. He did not raise his arms to defend himself. He simply closed his eyes and waited for the end. The end did not come. When Danny opened his eyes, the beast's face was inches from his own. Those massive jaws were open, close enough that Danny could count every tooth. Hot breath poured over him like a furnace. The creature's 6 red eyes burned into his. But the teeth had not touched him. The Vornkai had stopped. Danny's heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. Sweat dripped down his face and his hands were shaking. But he forced himself to meet the creature's gaze again. "I am not going to run," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am not going to fight you. If you are going to kill me, then kill me. But I will not pretend to be something I am not." The beast made a sound. It was not a growl or a roar. It was something else, something that almost sounded like a question. Then it pulled back and began to circle again. Danny let out a shaky breath. He was still alive. He did not know why, but he was still alive. The circling continued for what felt like hours. The beast would approach, then retreat. It would growl, then fall silent. Sometimes it would swipe a massive claw toward Danny, stopping just short of contact. Each time, Danny flinched but held his ground. He understood now what this was. The beast was testing him, but not testing his strength or his speed. It was testing something deeper. It wanted to know who he really was beneath all the training and the fear and the desire to prove himself. So Danny let it see. He thought about his sister, how she used to follow him everywhere when they were young. He thought about the promise he had made to come back to her. He thought about his father's words about courage, about doing what needed to be done even when you were afraid. He thought about Earth, about the blue oceans and the green forests and the billions of people going about their lives, never knowing that one human was standing in an ancient chamber on a distant planet, facing a creature that had judged warriors for 3,000 years. He thought about what it meant to be human, to be small and soft and breakable, but to keep going anyway, to know that the universe was vast and terrifying and full of things that could destroy you, but to reach out into the darkness regardless, to carry war in your blood but still choose peace. The Vornkai stopped circling. It stood before Danny once again, but something had changed. The red glow in its eyes seemed different somehow, less hostile, more curious. The pressure in Danny's mind shifted. It was no longer pushing, no longer digging. Instead, it felt like the creature was simply watching now, waiting. Danny took a slow breath. "I know what I am," he said quietly. "I know what my species is. We are violent. We are afraid. We destroy things, including ourselves. But we are also more than that. We love. We hope. We dream. We keep trying to be better, even when we fail." He paused, searching for the right words. "I am not the strongest cadet here. I am not the fastest or the smartest. I cannot see in the dark, or breathe underwater, or lift heavy things. All I have is this." He placed a hand over his chest, over his heart. "This small, fragile thing that keeps beating no matter how scared I am." The beast was utterly still now. Its 6 eyes were fixed on Danny's hand, on the place where his heart was beating beneath his skin. And then, slowly, the Vornkai did something that had not happened in over 800 years. It began to lower itself to the ground. In the observation gallery, there was complete silence. Admiral Kren had risen from his seat without realizing it. His ancient eyes were wide, something that had not happened in decades. Beside him, Commander Silas had gone pale, her blue skin turning almost white. The senators and officials were frozen in place, staring at the viewing screens with expressions of shock. Below them, in the ancient chamber, the Vornkai was kneeling. The massive creature had lowered its front legs first, bringing its great head down toward the floor. Then its back legs had followed, until the beast was resting on the ground in a position of complete submission. Its 6 red eyes remained fixed on the human standing before it. But the hostility was gone. In its place was something none of them had ever seen in the creature before: respect. "That is not possible," one of the senators whispered. "The Vornkai does not kneel. It has never knelt." But Admiral Kren knew that was not quite true. He had read the old records, the ones that dated back to the earliest days of the Academy. There had been a time, long ago, when the beast had knelt before a few chosen individuals. Warriors who were deemed not just worthy, but exceptional. Leaders who would go on to change the course of history. But the last time it had happened was over 800 years ago. and the details had been lost to time. Until now, in the chamber below, Danny stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The creature that had terrified every cadet for thousands of years was kneeling at his feet. And he had no idea why. "I do not understand," he said quietly. "I did not do anything." The Vornkai made a sound, a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the stone floor. It was not a growl. It was something gentler, almost like a purr. Then, slowly, it extended one massive claw toward Danny. Danny's first instinct was to step back, but he forced himself to stay still. The claw came closer, closer, until the tip was resting lightly against his chest, directly over his heart. There was a moment of warmth, like sunlight passing through clouds. Then a strange tingling sensation spread across Danny's skin. When the beast withdrew its claw, there was a mark on Danny's chest, not a single line, like the marks given to cadets who passed. A circle. A perfect, complete circle, carved into his skin as if it had always been there. Danny looked down at the mark, then back up at the beast. "What does this mean?" The creature did not answer with words. It simply watched him with those 6 ancient eyes, and Danny felt something pass between them. Not words. Exactly. More like a feeling. A sense of recognition, of understanding. The beast had been testing warriors for 3,000 years. It had seen countless species come and go. It had judged emperors, and generals, and heroes. It had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. And in all that time, it had rarely found what it was looking for. Until today, the pressure in Danny's mind shifted one last time. It was not pushing anymore. It was showing him something. Images flashed through his thoughts. Too fast to fully understand, but clear enough to feel. He saw wars, endless wars across countless worlds, species destroying each other over resources and territory and pride. He saw the architects, the beings who had created the Vornkai, and he understood that they had made the creature to find something specific. Not the strongest warrior. Not the most skilled fighter. Something else. Someone who understood violence without being consumed by it. Someone who could look into the darkness and not become part of it. Someone who knew exactly what they were capable of and chose to be better anyway. The images faded, and Danny was left standing in the chamber, breathing hard, his mind reeling from what he had seen. "I understand," he whispered, though he was not sure he truly did. "At least, I think I do." The Vornkai rose slowly, its massive body unfolding until it stood at its full height once again. It looked at Danny one last time, and there was something almost gentle in those 6 red eyes. Then it turned and walked back to its corner of the chamber, settling down into the shadows, as if nothing unusual had happened. The test was over. Danny turned toward the doors. His legs felt weak and his head was spinning, but he managed to walk without stumbling. When the doors opened, letting in the light from outside, he had to shield his eyes for a moment. The first thing he saw was Vorak's face. His friend was staring at him with an expression of complete shock. Behind Vorak, the other cadets were gathered, all of them looking at Danny, like he had just returned from the dead. "You survived," Vorak breathed. "Danny, you survived." "I think I did more than survive," Danny said quietly. He moved his hand away from his chest, revealing the circular mark. Vorak's mandibles stopped clicking. His black eyes went wide. "That mark. I have never seen anything like it." Neither had anyone else. Commander Silas approached, her pale face still showing traces of shock. She examined the mark on Danny's chest without touching it, her expression unreadable. "This is unprecedented," she said finally. "I must consult with the Admiral." She walked away quickly, leaving Danny standing among the other cadets. They were all staring at him now. Even the ones who had looked down on him before. Even the ones who had expected him to die. Korath, the massive Draxian who had been tested first, pushed his way through the crowd. His stone-gray face was hard to read, but his voice was surprisingly soft when he spoke. "Human, what happened in there?" Danny shook his head slowly. "I am not entirely sure. The beast looked at me, It saw everything I was, everything humans are. And then it knelt. Why? That was the question, was it not? Danny had been asking himself the same thing since the moment it happened. I think, he said carefully, it was looking for something specific. Something it had not seen in a very long time, and somehow, I had it. He paused, touching the circular mark on his chest. Or maybe all humans have it. I do not know. The crowd parted as Admiral Kren approached. The ancient Draxian towered over everyone, his stone body scarred from countless battles. He stopped in front of Danny and looked down at him with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. Do you know what that mark means, human? Danny met his gaze without flinching. No, sir, I do not. It is called the Circle of the Chosen. The last time it was given was 847 years ago, to a Velan commander named Sirath, who went on to end the Third Galactic War. The Admiral's voice was heavy with significance. Before that, it was given only 3 other times in the entire history of the Academy. Danny did not know what to say. The weight of that information pressed down on him like a physical force. The Vornkai does not make mistakes. Admiral Kren continued. It has never been wrong. Whatever it saw in you, whatever it recognized, it means something, something important. He placed one massive hand on Danny's shoulder, surprisingly gentle despite its weight. Humanity has just announced itself to the galaxy, young one. I hope you are ready for what comes next. Danny thought about his family back on Earth. He thought about all the humans who were watching the stars, hoping for a future among them. I will have to be, he said quietly. The Admiral nodded, something like approval in his ancient eyes. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Danny standing in the light of the twin suns, marked by an ancient creature that had finally found what it was looking for. The news spread across the Confederacy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the story. A human cadet had made the Vornkai kneel. A human had received the Circle of the Chosen, a mark that had not been given in over 8 centuries. A member of the newest and weakest species in the Confederacy had achieved something that the mightiest warriors of 100 worlds had never accomplished. Some refused to believe it. They called it a trick, a malfunction, a misunderstanding. The Vornkai was ancient, and perhaps it was finally breaking down. Perhaps the human had cheated somehow. Perhaps the whole thing was a lie designed to make the new species look more important than they really were. But the records did not lie. The viewing screens had captured everything, and the mark on Danny's chest was real, burned into his skin by the touch of a creature that had been judging warriors since before most civilizations existed. Danny spent the first 3 days after the test in a medical facility. Not because he was injured, but because scientists and officials wanted to study him. They scanned his body and his brain. They asked him hundreds of questions about what he had felt and thought during the test. They tried to find something special about him, something that would explain why the beast had chosen him. They found nothing. Danny was exactly what he appeared to be. An ordinary human, with no special abilities, no hidden powers, no secret advantages. He was smaller and weaker than most of the other cadets. His senses were less sharp, his body healed more slowly, and yet the Vornkai had knelt. On the 4th day, Admiral Kren came to see him. The ancient Draxian dismissed the scientists and officials with a wave of his massive hand, then sat down across from Danny in the small white room. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. You are confused, the Admiral said finally. It was not a question, Danny nodded. I have been trying to understand what happened. Why me? Why not someone stronger? Someone more impressive? The Admiral's stone face shifted into something that might have been a smile. That is the wrong question. The Vornkai does not judge strength. If it did, the Draxians would receive the circle every generation. We are the strongest species in the Confederacy. Then what does it judge? Admiral Kren leaned back in his chair. Despite his size, there was something gentle about him. A wisdom that came from living for hundreds of years and seeing things that most beings could not imagine. The architects created the Vornkai for a specific purpose. he said slowly. They wanted to find leaders. Not warriors, not fighters, but true leaders. Beings who could guide others through the darkest times without losing themselves in the darkness. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Courage is common. Every species produces individuals who are willing to fight, willing to die. That is not special. What is special is something much rarer. The ability to understand violence without becoming violent, to face the monster and not become one yourself, to carry darkness inside you and still choose the light. Danny thought about this. He thought about the images the Vornkai had shown him. The endless wars, the suffering, the destruction. He thought about humanity's own history, the terrible things his species had done to itself before ever leaving Earth. Humans are violent, he said quietly. We have fought wars against each other for thousands of years. We invented weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We almost killed ourselves many times before we ever reached the stars. Yes, Admiral Kren agreed. And that is exactly why the beast chose you. Quote, Danny frowned. I do not understand. The Admiral stood and walked to the window. Outside, the twin suns of Verath Prime were setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Most species in the Confederacy have never truly faced extinction by their own hands, he said. The Draxians have always been too strong for any enemy to threaten us. The Velen evolved in a peaceful environment, where conflict was rare. The Kethari have rigid social structures that prevent large-scale war. Each species has its own story, its own path to the stars. He turned to look at Danny. But humans are different. Your species has stood at the edge of the cliff many times. You have looked into the abyss of your own destruction, and somehow pulled yourselves back. You know exactly what you are capable of. The worst things imaginable. And yet you are still here. Still trying. Still hoping. Danny felt something tighten in his chest. He thought about the history lessons he had taken as a child. The great wars, the nuclear weapons, the moments when it seemed like everything would end, and yet humanity had survived, not because they were strong, or smart, or special, but because they had refused to give up. The Vornkai sees everything, Admiral Kren continued. It saw your fears and your doubts and your weakness. But it also saw something else. It saw a species that has faced its own darkness and chosen to be better. It saw beings who understand violence, truly understand it, and still reach for peace. He walked back to Danny and placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. That is what the architects were looking for. Not warriors who had never known violence, but warriors who knew violence intimately and rejected it anyway. Leaders who could guide others through the darkness because they had walked through it themselves and found their way out. Danny was silent for a long moment, processing everything the Admiral had said. It made a strange kind of sense. Humans were not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but they had learned things that other species had never needed to learn. Lessons written in blood and fire and tears. So what happens now? Danny asked finally. Admiral Kren's expression was serious. Now, everything changes. The circle of the chosen is not just a mark, it is a symbol. Those who bear it are destined for great things. The last one, Cyrith, ended a war that had been raging for 100 years. The one before that united 3 warring empires into a single alliance. You think I am supposed to do something like that? I think, the Admiral said slowly, that humanity is supposed to do something like that. You are only the first. The messenger. The proof that your species has something valuable to offer the galaxy. He released Danny's shoulder and stepped back. Word of what happened here will reach every corner of the Confederacy. Some will fear humans. Some will hate them. But others will see what I see. A young species with wisdom beyond their years, forged in the fire of their own mistakes, and made stronger for it. Danny stood and walked to the window, standing beside the Admiral. The suns had almost set now, leaving only a thin line of gold on the horizon. I just wanted to prove that humans belonged here, he said quietly. I never expected any of this. The best leaders never do. Admiral Kren's voice was warm. They simply do what needs to be done, and let history judge the rest. Danny thought about his family back on Earth. His mother, and father, and sister, who had no idea what had happened. He thought about all the humans who had worked so hard to earn a place in the galaxy, struggling against the assumption that they were too small and too weak to matter. Now everything was different. The galaxy had seen what a human could do, what humans were made of. Not strength, not power, not special abilities, just the stubborn refusal to give up. The determination to keep trying, even when everything seemed hopeless. The ability to carry darkness inside, and still choose to be something better. That was what the Vornkai had seen. That was what made humanity special. Danny touched the circular mark on his chest. It was warm under his fingers, a reminder of the ancient creature that had looked into his soul and found something worth honoring. "I will try to live up to it," he said quietly. "Whatever it means, whatever I am supposed to do, I will try." Admiral Kren nodded, satisfaction in his ancient eyes. "That is all any of us can do. Now come, there is a celebration being prepared in your honor, and the other cadets are waiting to meet the human who made a 3,000-year-old war beast kneel." Danny smiled, a real smile for the first time in days. He did not know what the future held. He did not know what challenges awaited him or what role he was supposed to play in the galaxy's history. But he knew one thing for certain: he was not alone. Billions of humans stood behind him, each one carrying the same strange mixture of darkness and light that the Vornkai had recognized, and together they were going to change everything.